When I started this podcast, I wanted it to be about Bristol leaders who are doing big and important things with stories that needed to be told. And when I think about a community and who are the important leaders in the community, I don't know that there's a more important leadership role than the principal of the high school. And you guys are doing some really cool stuff. You personally have just gotten an award for Principal of the Year in the East Region of the state.
Yes.
A YWCA Achievement Award. So there's so many cool things happening, and there's so much I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the kids. I want to know what's going on inside the high school with the kids. What are the anxieties? What are the wins? I also want to know what the pain points are. Like, what are the big challenges? What solutions are you guys trying? So there's so much I want to talk about today, but I want to start with your story. So Kim Kirk, thanks so much for being on today. I know you're a very busy woman, especially this time of year. So tell me where Kim's story begins.
Well, first of all, I appreciate all you said. I too think that leaders in education have very important roles. Kids are our future. We talked about that a few minutes ago before this podcast started. But so my story, goodness, I was thinking about this last night. I was reading some of the notes and things you sent me, and I was thinking, I'm a Bristol girl. I was born and raised in Bristol. Mm-hmm. My parents still live in the little house I grew up in on Riverview, right across from the National Guard Armory. Yeah. So not too far from here, right up the road. So this is kind of my old stomping ground, if you would. Yeah. So, Bristol is a wonderful community that has given so much to me. And, my family, we've joked about, gosh, we go on vacation. And I'd really love to move here. I'd love to move to Florida. And I just joked on our last vacation about, I think I was just born to live at the beach. But all jokes aside, you can't beat Bristol. You really can't. Yeah. So I grew up right up the road here. I went to Haynesfield Elementary School. Yep. And I'll just tell you, I was a big tomboy as a kid. I grew up in the day where you're outside and somebody's whistling. One whistle for dinner, two whistles come in. It's nighttime, it's time to go to bed. But grew up with a lot of kids in the neighborhood. So we were all the time playing kickball, wiffle ball, kick the can, making up games. All the games, all day long.
We were talking at lunch yesterday, and a young parent was saying, man, I feel like we have to entertain them.
Yeah.
Have to entertain the kids all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Nobody entertained them.
No, we entertain one another. Yeah. And riding bikes. I remember riding bikes up to the Blue Circle. It was a big deal to ride a half a mile of Blue Circle. Without a helmet. And the taco place was a little restaurant that came in up here on the corner. We used to go up there, and there used to be a little, like a card shop up there at the old Howard Brothers area. Yep. And we collected baseball cards. We'd go up there and trade baseball cards. We really thought we were doing big stuff. But grew up playing ball. Basketball, I've always said I feel like I was born with a basketball in my hand.
So that was your sport?
It's my sport.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember being outside. My dad put a goal up out back, and I'd go out and shoot in the wintertime with gloves on. And, there was just nothing else to do but play basketball. But when I think about growing up, and I think about, and I've told this story to a few people, I think about, we have a picture window in our front there, and my neighbor across the street was several years older than me, but she played on the Tennessee High Girls basketball team. Mm-hmm. And I would stand in the picture window as a young kid and watch the girls' basketball bus pull up and pick her up. And I couldn't wait to be that kid, and it sounds so cheesy, but I just thought, gosh, I can't wait for my moment to be on that bus and be a Tennessee High Viking. Yeah. And I'll never forget those things. It sounds so crazy now, but and that was back in the day where you had your individual sports going on at the individual schools. So that was back in the day of Rosemont, Anderson, Central, all the elementary schools. Yeah. So we would come together over there at Slater and play games on Saturdays. And occasionally we would move up to what used to be Vance Middle School and play our games there on Saturdays. And it was funny because we were so competitive with one another. Right. And we didn't have a girls team then, so I played with the boys. Yeah. And we always wanted to beat the Avoca Dragons. And then you came together in the middle school,
Uh-huh.
and you were still like competing for those positions with people that you had grown up playing against. But then you had a real sense of camaraderie because of what you had grown up
Sure.
with, and that, you know,
Sure.
with the sports and what it meant to you.
And
Yeah,
every
it was exciting.
school has its own,
Yeah.
its own personality.
Yeah, it was so neat.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah, that
It-
team.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. It was great.
When did you realize you had the teaching gene?
Oh my goodness. I'll tell you, my dad, I remember I was originally going to go to Appalachian State, and I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And then I was dating my now husband, high school sweetheart, and I thought, well, maybe I had a really good friend, and I was with her when she's like, why don't you just go to ETSU and room with me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe I just should. So I didn't go to Appalachian State. My parents were thrilled. They lost a little bit of money, but I ended up going to ETSU, and I started off, I was going to do something like in medical,
Mhm.
and I hated
Mhm.
everything about it. And my dad said, Kim, you always loved kids and working with kids. Have you ever thought about being a teacher? And I thought, well, not really, but kind of. And I started in the program and never looked back. It was where I was meant to be.
Were you a leader when you were a kid?
I think I would call myself a bit of a leader.
Mhm.
I was more of an individual.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I ever tried to fit into a mold of anything. I was
Mhm.
more of an individual.
Yeah.
So I would call myself a leader in some things. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go to ETSU.
Mhm.
You find teaching along the way there.
Yeah.
Decide that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then you start the path.
I started the path, and that path was so difficult back then. That was like when you were having 300 and 400 applicants I was elementary
Yeah.
certified. So 300 and 400 applicants for these elementary jobs. And I was very fortunate, a lot of prayers and stuff going out there, but I had an interim offered to me at Gravely Elementary School.
Mhm.
And that's in the Bloomingdale area of
Yep.
Kingsport. You and I talked
Yep.
about, that area. And I always called it the cracker box on the hill because it's literally a little box on a hilltop.
Yeah.
And it was one hallway. You went downstairs to the cafeteria, which also was the gymnasium. And it was really one class per grade. And my very first class had 13 kids. 13 kids. And they were 13 of the poorest kids you've ever seen.
I'm sure.
And man, so kids have changed me way more than I've ever changed kids. Like, I'll just tell you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably minimal, like that. That's the area that I'm from.
Yeah.
So minimal resources, no
Minimal.
frills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
a teacher in a classroom.
That was it.
Right.
Yeah. And the greatest, it was like a family,
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, one of the teachers that I taught with there just passed away recently, and just reading all the comments about what it was like at Gravely and all the people that, we used to work together and what a little family it was special.
Yeah.
It was very special.
Yeah, it's raw. It's raw. Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes I think education, like it's so much of the teacher can have such an influence.
Such an
even
influence.
without any of the resources.
Yeah, I wish people really understood just how important teachers are
Mhm.
and how important educators are. I mean, like, you remember your teachers.
Sure.
I remember
Sure.
my teachers, some good and some bad. Sometimes you remember more the bad.
Yeah.
And a teacher can change a trajectory and, just little things that are said that stick with kids. And we don't realize sometimes the impact that our words have on people.
Yeah.
It's
Especially
huge.
at that age,
Mhm.
for sure.
And they don't forget those things,
Yeah.
but
You had a lot of different roles in the county county system.
I did.
And you ended up at the alternative school
in Johnson City.
And it sounds like that was a really important part of your story.
Oh my goodness, that was the most learning and growth I've ever had.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I loved it there.
Did you choose that position or did you just end up with it?
So the principal at Central left to be
Mhm.
principal at Science Hill, and she had mentioned to me there was going to be an opening there and told me what it was. And I was like, sign me up, because at Central I did discipline most of the time I was there, and I loved doing discipline, which is rare. I loved everything about it. My goal was always, you may come in, you may cuss me, you may hate me, but my goal is that in the end, I want you to understand. Let's shake hands or let's hug each other. And that was always my goal. And a lot of times that's how it ended up. Not always, but a lot of times. And it's funny when I think about the alternative school. This is a story that I share. I had this kid, and we had 8th graders there in a self-contained classroom for the 8th grade program. And I'm telling you what, this is one of those kids you never forget their name. And it was it was tough and there were obstacles, and he really did not like me a lot. And we had some really, really tense moments. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I get a message on Facebook and I'm thinking, wow, I see this kid's name and I'm thinking, what's this going to be? And I open it and it was him thanking me. And he said, you probably hate me. And I was like, I don't hate you, but I'm so proud of you. And he was telling me what he had accomplished. And he said, I look back and I see now, and that's what that's where the rewards come. But I'm talking about some tough situations that it doesn't always end that way, but a lot of times it does, and a lot of times you don't know. You don't know those things.
What did you learn about leadership from that environment? 'Cause it's a pretty extreme environment, right? And I always feel like looking back, I've learned the most important things from uncomfortable situations and difficult places.
One of the biggest things, so this is my 31st year in education. I'm getting ready to start. And when I talk about going back and doing discipline at Central High School when I was there as assistant principal, that was back in the days of, if you had zero tolerance, you're sending kids home. They're not getting a diploma, and our hands were tied and we had to do that a number of times. And I remember some of the kids' names that I had to zero tolerance. And I think in that moment, that's what you do. You know what I mean? But looking back on it, I think, wait, we weren't doing the right thing. You know what I mean? You're not setting kids up for success when they don't have a path. You're kicking them out of school. They don't have a path, So I feel bad about that. I have a lot of control over it. But when I think about that and going to alternative school, oh my goodness, so much learning there about it's about being a human, and it's about finding out why these kids are doing this. Why are these kids here? Listening to their stories. I think I became a better listener, and I think I learned that we've made a lot of mistakes, and I think you have to take time to look at, I'm not always right, and I also, you're not going to respect me just because I'm the adult that walked in here as your principal. I had to earn that. You know what I mean? And I think so many times adults just think you have to respect me because of the position, or just because I've been given this title, I'm walking in. That's not how it is. You have to earn that. You have to prove to people.
Kids.
And trying to prove to them that I'm really trying to help you.
What do they respect?
They respect being listened to. They want to be listened to, and really in that situation, it was a lot of days like I had a lot of people that worked with me. We were more of a team, but it was a constant line out my door of situations. And it was a lot of times me saying, hey, Debbie, my secretary, call the mom, he's going home for the day. But it was always, okay, you can't make it today. We're going to start over tomorrow. But they knew they could come back the next day and we're going to start over with them. We're not going to talk about yesterday. We're going to start over. And, we had situations there where, kids leaving and going and robbing a house behind us, just things like that. We had some real situations. But I also learned in that moment that some of those kids that are the hardest, and they're going to have your back.
Oh, really?
It's like you're not going to talk to Miss Kirk like that. Because they know that at the end of the day, kids need rules. They want, really, when you get below the surface of things, kids long for rules because that's how they feel they're cared about. You know what I'm saying?
Tell me more about that.
Okay, I'll tell you. So I have raised two kids outside of my own. And one of them, I'll never forget, we were driving up 11W one time and I'm taking her to her dad and we're talking about this and she's young. And she's like, when I'm given rules, I feel like somebody cares about me. And then it started, I thought that's true because if you just say, here, have at it.
Yeah.
You're giving them a ticket that go do whatever, I don't really care. And that's the message we send. But if we hold kids accountable, they may not understand it. They may get mad in that moment. I think about with my own kids. In that moment, you're mad. You're going to understand one day. And you're going to know it's just because you were loved and cared about. And I think a lot of kids we deal with in education, they don't have that at home. They're longing for that. They're not going to tell you. They're going to say, hey, give me rules.
Impose rules.
Yeah, sure. But they long for that. I think human beings long for that.
So you don't think it's particular to AP students or alternative school students?
I don't.
It's a kid. It's just
I think it's a human thing.
A human thing.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I think we all get caught up in our jobs and rules and lives and all those things. We just don't forget about those little things, And I think that in that time period that I was able to spend there, man, I learned a lot. And I worked with a very diverse group of people. And one of the greatest things about that is that we didn't agree on a lot of things, but we were on the same team with the same goal in mind.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there are people there that I could call right now and say, hey, I got a little situation going on here. They'd be here in 10 or 15 seconds. And it's just how you treat people, you know?
Yeah, no, you talk about like the rules and the, I guess, structure around giving kids some structure and guidelines and boundaries.
Yeah.
But also listening to them. That takes a lot of time. In a school, when you were over discipline, you said there was a line.
Yeah, there was a line at the door most of the day.
I was in one of those lines at Central at one point in my life.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of time. So it's got to be exhausting. So at some point, you probably choose between efficiency, which is a zero tolerance rule, and really investing the time to listen and really work on that structure.
Yeah. And there are times I should have listened more. You know, I mean, like if I could go back and do the first half of my career, there are a lot of things I would do very, very differently, you know, but I think that comes with growing and learning. And I think that we all have to be able to take a step back and think, I didn't do it the best way right there. Be willing to admit that we're not perfect, you know? Yeah. And there's growth in your life that you have to allow to happen, and it makes you better on the other end of things.
For sure. It's not unlike sports.
Right,
like
sure.
Sport. The thing about sports, said this, is the thing I miss about coaching is there's instant feedback. You know, you go, you compete, there's a scoreboard, you either win or you lose. If you lose, it's feedback.
Yeah.
You go and you try to fix the things that caused you to lose.
And it's so funny you bring up coaching. I think sometimes, like in my role now, sometimes I'm looking out and I'm thinking, man, I'm really jealous of those relationships those coaches have. Because that's not, it's very hard for me to continue to have that. You know what I'm saying, in my role? And I think a lot of times people just, there's lack of understanding. And sometimes, and I know that's my role. It doesn't bother me, but sometimes I wish people understood more. You know? Just, I'm not just a person to come give you rules to get a paycheck.
Right.
There's a bigger purpose and a bigger reason.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part.
Those things that were important to you at what you described as little crackerbacks.
Yeah.
Crackerbacks on the Hill Gravelly Elementary School. Like that, us against the world. We got each other's backs. It's a small community. It's simple, right? Like those things that drove you then are still probably the things that drive you now. It's just,
they are. And I still hear from some of those kids in that first class. It's amazing. It's amazing.
The first kids you coach, the first kids you teach, they never go away.
No. They're like almost 40 years old now.
Yeah. And I guess it's because you learn. The learning curve is so steep.
It is. Yeah.
I remember walking
It sure is.
I taught at King University, and I remember walking in the classroom the first time. I was 24 or whatever, and I was like, I remember. It's such a wild experience.
Right.
And you walk in the room and you know, man, no one is going to say anything until I speak.
Right. I got to do this. Yeah, those first are tough.
So much insecurity. And
oh, gosh,
you have to just fake it.
That's it. You fake it till you make it.
Yeah. But you learn, like, you never forget never forget the people that were there in the room.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah. So you have all these different experiences. You learn discipline, which sounds like it's a real art for you. You said you enjoyed it.
I did enjoy it.
And the confrontation is hard for a lot of people, and that probably is a big part of your job now. I suspect that the difficult problems that no one else will solve end up in your office now, and a lot of that's confrontation.
A lot of it is.
What lessons have you on confrontation? What lessons have you learned?
You have to listen.
Okay.
Sometimes that's hard.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be willing to take it take the heat.
Okay.
You know, sometimes like if I know something's right and I know people are going to be angry, I'm going to listen, but I'm also not going to back down.
Okay.
If I know it's the right thing. You know what I'm saying? Now, there have been times that maybe this isn't the right thing. I can drop back and punt. And I say that to the staff all the time. This doesn't work. We're going to drop back and punt. You know? Yeah. But a lot of times, there are things that become controversial that I feel like are the right things. You know?
Do you really believe?
I do. Yeah. And I'm not one to back down.
Mm-hmm.
And not in an aggressive type of way, but I also know that I'm in this job for a reason, and I have to know that at the end of the day that I'm trying to make the very best decisions for a large group of people. But I also don't make those decisions alone. I have different groups I meet with and different people that provide insight, and I think that my administrative team would tell you that we work together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they would tell you that they could go solve a problem and use the same language they know that I'm going to turn around and use.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that they know that we're all on the same page, and I think that's very important.
There's got to be an incentive for people in your position to play it safe. There's got to be that kind of, it would be easier to play it safe.
Yeah.
It would be easier not to take those risks.
Yeah, that's just not me.
Yeah.
If it's the best thing. And I think too, you learn to fight your battles. There are some battles that aren't worth fighting. But if it's a battle worth fighting, it may be easier to take the road and not do it. But if it's worth it, that's what we're gonna do.
No, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much to learn there, because you see so many people in leadership roles and they choose to play it safe, and it's so frustrating.
That is frustrating.
They lose the opportunity. It's such an opportunity to make a difference, but they play it safe. And I talk a lot on here about kids in sports.
Right.
How can we create environments where kids can take risks?
Yeah.
Let's let them fail. Let's give them a safe place to fail. And
your biggest learning comes from failure.
For sure.
I mean, 100%.
There is nothing less entertaining in all the world than to watch a girls' basketball game where all the players are afraid to miss a shot.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because the score ends up
10 to 7. Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that, right? Like this fear of failure.
Yeah.
It's just so boring. So boring to watch.
But imagine what that feels like to kids. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you're always scared of failure.
Yeah.
But then I think that becomes like in classrooms, when you're so scared of failure that you just stop. Then you lay your head down. You would rather sleep or be a behavior problem than fail, And I think that so many times, and we talk a lot about give kids chances to succeed. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they're not going to be successful at this first task or objective in your classroom, but give them something they are successful at.
Yeah.
Give them a little bit they can accomplish, and then their confidence grows a little bit. And then maybe it's not just easier to fail.
How important, in your experience in the alternative school, how big of a role is confidence in this kids, the lack of it?
It's big. And I'll tell you one thing that we did there when I was there is we started doing our own things. We had a talent show one time. But the first time, I'll never forget it. And I was like, these kids are so talented, in their own ways, but just not at your typical things that first come to mind when you think about a talent show. But when you let them get in a gym and they're good at something, man, their confidence rises.
Wow,
And if you can just, at the alternative school, I just feel like we had a group of teachers, they believed in them. They're going to work with them. They're going to take them from where they are and grow them. And you can see kids that then they want to be there. They know they're getting help. They know that they're going to be worked with, and then they want to be there. And we have to get kids in a place where they want to be there.
And you think wanting to be somewhere is to be somewhere where people believe in you and listen to you,
right,
and provide some structure.
And I say that in education, listen to them. It's so hard sometimes because teachers have a hard job. I'm going to tell you. You talk about my job being hard. Teachers have the hardest job because they are given so many things to do. And I'm not talking about just locally, just the expectations from the state. You know what I'm saying? Things that we have no control over. So they're so tasked with so many things to do, and it seems like there are always things added. And then you are so stressed out about, well, I've got to get this test score, or I've got to get this covered, or I've got this test to give. And then we get so stressed out that we then become programmed that we don't have time. So then you don't have time to listen. You know what I mean? We don't have time for the important things. Right.
The basic
That's it.
fundamentals.
And I feel like that's where education kind of has become, because we're so under so much pressure for so many things that I think are just a number. And we forget about human beings in that.
And you don't have any control any control over that.
No, I tell my staff, like, at the end of the day, we're going to do just what's best for kids. I want to get to know kids. I want you to take time to learn about your kids. You know, they're coming in and putting their head down. Why? You know, let's take time for that. There's time because if you do that, everything else is going to be great. Everything else will end up where it needs to be if we're doing all the fundamental, just being good human things. Everything else is going to be okay. That's how I feel about it.
And you don't know why that kid is putting their head down on the table until you spend the time. You listen to them, but time is so short.
Yeah, and like we've had our share of tragedy at Tennessee High, and we had some really hard years there, but kids have had a hard time. Like when you go back to, and I even hate to mention it, but during the COVID times, like there was so much loss, and so many parents lost their jobs, and so many people lost loved ones, and kids still suffer from that, and just that human side of things. Like there's been a lot of loss in this community. We as a community, I don't think we are where we used to be, and I think about that a lot. And there are a lot of needs in this community, and in high school, I always say this: elementary schools and middle school, sometimes I think you know it more, but when you get to high school, kids try to hide it.
Oh, you think they just get more skilled at like
they do. They don't want people to know that they don't have food, or they don't have any clean clothing. Those things are hard.
Their home's a mess.
Yeah. And it's not true for everyone, but it's true for a lot. But then you also have kids who have all the best that life has to offer, but sometimes they still have struggles that are masked by having all that. Come in and put a smile on your face every day. Do you
think we would be, like, us civilians would be surprised by the amount of anxiety that our kids are dealing with and just issues?
Yes, I think that people have no idea. Life is so fast paced, and we're all of us. We don't take time to slow down. We have our jobs and we have our hobbies and all these things, and life is so fast paced that we just don't really take time to look at what really is going on. That's no fault of anyone. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way life is. And I mean, your school's a small microcosm of that.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a lot out there causing anxiety with kids. And
has it changed? It's changed over, you said,
I think it's changed.
31 years. So
yes.
Kinds of problems have changed?
I think they've changed drastically. I also think kids have changed. And I think people will tell you kids really haven't. Kids are just always saying, I don't agree with that. And I think that kids have changed because of how they're growing up. I mean, you think about when I go back and talk about growing up in Bristol, I'm a tomboy. I'm outside from the minute I wake up to the minute, I have to come in, and we're playing all these games. How often do you see kids doing that stuff anymore?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're on their iPads or they're on a phone, and that's not placing blame on people either. But I think it's just lack of knowing. Like we start. I mean, I had my first cell phone probably, golly, when I first got my first teaching job. So I'm going back to talking about age here, but I mean, I'm 93, had a big bag phone, and I thought that was the greatest thing. And then, you think growing up, gosh, I can't wait to get this upgrade. I get a new phone. And now I'm like, I wish somebody would take my phone. You know what I mean? But phones have become so important. And, this year we're doing the no cell phone thing, and that's been a bit heated, and people are all over the place about it. We put it out early so people kind of have time to think about it. But that's not Kim Kirk hates you. She wants you to not have a phone. That's Kim Kirk sees all the things that happen in a school day specifically because of that phone. And it's, number one, a safety thing. It's, number two, a mental health thing. I had a parent share with me a few weeks ago. I met with her, and she was really positive about not having the phones. And she said, my husband and I went back and looked at our son's phone, and it was ridiculous, the amount of phone time during your school hours. Oh. That's a problem. You know what I mean? So, like, that's affecting learning. But bigger than that, it's affecting social skills. Like, parents are worried about, well, my son or daughter doesn't have anyone to talk to. They just need their phone. Well, maybe their phone is the reason why they don't have someone to talk to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we've got to get back to...
You feel strongly about that.
I feel so strongly about it. And the thing is, that's not a Kim Kirk thing either. That's a lot of research and reading and looking at across the nation, what's going on. And funny, most school systems are moving to some kind of a cell phone policy because I think it's far reaching. And also what happens on phones that we're just not aware of. Like we had somebody from the Bristol, Tennessee Police Department come in late last year and talk about what people are doing to pull people into things, like specifically young boys. They're engaging with them and pulling them into these situations where it becomes like a blackmail, and then they feel like they have to do certain things, and it's scary what all is out there. And as parents, we just don't know. You know what I mean? But it's going on all day long at school, and this phone is an easy tool for me to get behind and say things to you on that I would never say to your face. And that goes on. And I think that also it levels the playing field a little bit more. Let's be honest. Not everybody has a phone. So if I'm coming to school this year and I know that I don't have to try to be cool and fit in because of a phone, imagine the level of anxiety that is kind of lessened because of that with some kids. I don't have to try to keep up with that anymore.
Sure.
And it's not, I'm not trying to not let you talk to your parents. I want you to talk to your parents. But there's a time and a place and a need. And if it's an emergency, golly, we're going to let you talk to your kid.
Yeah. It's got to be hard to go halfway on something like this.
Yeah, you got to go all the way. And there was a conversation about, could you just take it during class time and not in the hallways and not lunch? Well, that's when most of our problems happen. Now, and I'll tell you, I've had to look at, because like last year we offered some platforms on phones. So I've had to look at what we're doing too, because we do a lot on devices.
Yeah.
But I've also told teachers, let's pull them off devices a little bit. Let's go back and do some just work in the classroom. Let's let them use pencils and pens and paper a little bit. Because I also think sometimes those devices become a babysitter, So lots of reasons.
Like a tool for efficiency.
Sure.
Kind of going back to
use it as a tool.
Yeah. But like what you were saying at the alternative, the things that mattered were listening.
Yeah.
Right? Like that face-to-face human communication, and probably success is getting the kid to talk back to you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If you put a phone between us, you can't do those things.
Right.
I guess you can do them, but
you're not present.
Yeah.
It's
not.
Yeah, if I'm on my phone right now, I'm not present with you. And really that sends, I feel like we are so dismissive of people because of devices.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's hard. And I mean, like I know I've got an iWatch on. You know what I'm saying? If it vibrates right now, I'm going to want to look at it.
Yeah.
So you have to think, you have to be intentional about what's important in that moment.
Yeah. I think kids are sometimes convinced themselves that they can do a lot of different things at the same time, and I don't believe that. Like I don't think humans are capable of doing more than one thing well at the same time. Like we're talking to one another. If we're trying to do other things,
it wouldn't go well.
Yeah.
Because I'm not present. You're not present.
Yeah. So in the classroom, what is that presence, like success looks like a teacher engaging and listening and having forming like a presence and a relationship in the classroom? I
think the first key to that is your kids want to be there.
Okay.
To me, you feel success when your kids want to come to your class, And
you see that. You see kids want to.
Yeah.
You see that success.
They get attached to our teachers. You know what I'm saying? They build relationships.
Yeah. But we never see that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's this building that we drive past and we hear.
But it's not like it used to. I think about, I graduated from Tennessee in 1989. And I have in my office, I have Vikings. It's letters. And on the front, it's yearbook pieces that have been taken and covered those letters. And I look back and that's me in that pep rally. And I had the best time in high school. I loved being a Viking. I loved that people wanted to come be a Viking. It was like Tennessee, I was a big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had fun. I didn't want high school to end. I was sad when high school ended. And I feel like kids don't get that same experience now. And it saddens me that kids don't have the same experience that I was able to have. Now, I recognize times are different. I recognize we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have so many more things then. And I also recognize that technology is good. I'm not trying to say it's bad either.
Yeah.
It's finding happy medium is a thing. But if people could recognize just how important schools are, and if this community could all get on the same page, like at dinner time when the kids are in and they're fussing about Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so and these rules, if we could all get on the same page and the common language could be, golly, this should be the best time of your life. Tennessee High, those teachers, they care about you. You need to, and everybody could have those conversations. I think we could see some things change because, man, without school, what do these kids have, And I know work's not fun. I didn't like all my classes. There were classes I hated. There were teachers I didn't. And I tell kids, I don't expect you to like all your teachers. I don't.
Yeah.
But school's important. And it's also, but I go back to expectations and how things have changed. And we have to, as educators, we have to allow some of the things that don't matter to other people to trickle back in. We have to take time for things that matter to us. And when I say that, I'm talking about taking time out for pep rallies, taking time out to have conversations about character. You know what I'm saying? Some of the things that don't have a number associated with them, if that makes sense.
Why is a pep rally so important?
Oh my goodness. And when I say a pep rally too, we've tried to move into pep rallies that celebrate a variety of things. Okay. We tried to do like a back to school pep rally that celebrated kids who had raised their grade point averages half a point. Just to celebrate. And I think it's important to celebrate things that are not celebrated all the time in all the places. Does that make sense? Like celebrating outside of the box. I think you have to find opportunities to celebrate kids in a variety of ways because there are multiple kids are going to walk in your building every day. They're going to walk through that are never going to be celebrated unless we're intentional about that.
Right.
And, we do super students. And the reason behind super students is I tell teachers, I want you to turn them in because they've done something extraordinary, but it's also an opportunity to recognize kids that maybe they're not on the honor roll or they don't have perfect attendance, but they're just being a good kid. They're just being a good human. You know what I'm saying? Recognize kids that maybe have never been recognized before. And it's so great. I call parents on Fridays of super students and I talk really, really fast because those parents are like, oh, you scared me, because they think it's going to be a negative thing because they're not used to that. I've been able to call parents that I honestly think for the first time they got a positive phone call.
So you take the time to make that call.
It's one of my favorite things. I've missed it one time and I had to do an automated call and it tore me up. But I called them. Yeah, I love and I don't get them all the time. I leave a message, but I love making those phone calls. Yeah. And I want it to be me.
I mean, I know how busy we all are, and the demands that are on you. Like I can't, like your role, all the problems in every classroom roll up to you. Like you get the most difficult, but you probably get everything from the other direction as well is dumped on the principal to solve, right?
Yeah.
Like the administrative building dumps it on you. So your time that you take, like, I think that's a really important part of leadership is like moments where you recognize that this is important. It is not efficient. Like this is probably not, if I made a list of the most important things, like the most urgent things to do today, that wouldn't be on it, that you prioritize them.
Yeah, I don't think my goal has ever been to be efficient. I don't think that's in my vocabulary. I want to be productive and responsible, but I honestly, and I, as I age and continue on this career, I really just want to be good to people. You know what I mean? I want to do something that they remember. Like, I want people to remember things that happen. I want change to occur that's good for people. And really, we started last year, we made the Be a Good Human t-shirts. And we've had conversations about what is a good human. And, it's pretty simple, really. And I just think that we've got to have conversations about that. And it's not so much about productivity and efficiency. And I go back to, it's great. I want us to be a reward school. I want us to have A's where the state's concerned. But I also realize really what gets you there. Yeah. It's not sometimes the things we think that matter. It's all the other things that when you make kids feel important, and like coaches,
Uh-huh.
you have kids that they would run through a brick wall for coaches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're going to do their best, but it's not you've got to make 10 out of 10 free throws. It was a process. I made you know that I believe in you.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? And then I'm going to get the best of you. And I think that if we take time to do the things that sometimes people on the outside wouldn't think are efficient, things are going to get better. So I would never say I'm the most efficient person. I will get stuff done, but I will take time out for things that matter.
Wow.
And I think there are things that matter sometimes that we just forget about in the busyness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that overall, that as a society, that's what you get away from. And I think that at Tennessee High, sometimes we've gotten away from those things, the things that really, really matter. And I think if we can get back to the things that really matter, kids will want to come to school. They'll want to be there. They won't dread it. Now, they're going to dread coming in this year and putting their phones up. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also up to me I really think in 2 or 3 weeks, if you start talking, they may be a little bit happier, because I think if you've seen any of the news in the area and they talk to kids, are like, I hated it at first. I was really mad. But golly, now I see it. I'm happier, and I'm not bound by this, and I can have conversations. So I think sometimes if we just take time to get back to things that matter, everything improves.
There's a real opportunity cost to that screen time, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? So what are the things that you want to feel that if you've got new time, you've got new opportunities to be present when we put the phones down, what do you want to feel that way?
And I've said we've got to try to find a way to get back to these kids. So, and then I bring in the badge conversation. Badges weren't real popular last year, but number one with me is safety. I'll just tell you, I've been through several situations that have gotten me where I am. And number one is I want to take care of everybody in that school. So when I go back to the badge conversation, it's about safety, but you don't understand it as a student. So how can we make this badge more valuable to you? Right? So we started reaching out in the community last year about if our kids show their badges, would you do something for them? And we've had very few people buy into that. So like I think Janie's place, they get a free drink or something, a couple of it, but not too many places have bought into that, and I wish they would. Because like as educators, you show your badge at places, you'll get like a discount.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'd like to make that more, because kids, if they could see, well, hey, if I show this, we find ways to make it important. So giving back, so like the cell phone, I know that lunches, they're going to have their cell phones. So we've talked about putting a few little old-timey gaming tables down there. They can play checkers, chess, things like that. But also when the Army or the Marines, some of those groups come in and they bring their pull-up bars, you would not believe the amount of interest in kids doing pull-ups.
Really?
Yeah. So stuff like that. So we have some little games, and they're going to probably think they're really stupid at first. Go down, hey, we're going to stand you up, you're going to do this game, you're going to win this prize. So just trying to give back and get them engaged back in things that they might think are silly, but at the end of the day, they might like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Incentivizing more. We're really working on incentivizing more attendance, ACT scores, things like that. Those are the big pushes.
Those are all examples of being present.
Being present.
A game.
Yeah. Just be present.
Competitions.
Yeah. Competition's great.
Yeah. And then the communal part. I've had a lot of conversations with people recently, and I've been told that you would not believe how lonely these kids are since COVID. How true?
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that we have and I think that when I think about it, and I have been thinking about this for a while. So like you think about kids in 2020 who went home, they had a device. Nothing was open. They weren't going to do anything. We're all apart. They had their devices. And I think on that device, you think about, there are studies out there now that talk about your frontal lobe. In females, it used to close a little bit earlier than males in the early 20s. Well, now there's research to show that it's closing later. And I think part of that is we've set kids at home, 9, 10, 8, whatever age, with a device that has everything in the world on it. And their minds can't comprehend those things. You know what I mean? So then they have all these things they're looking at, and they don't know which direction to go. They don't know. So then they're looking for online groups to fit in with. You know what I mean? So they're going all these directions with no clear direction. and then they're confused and they don't have a lot of friends who are present. So they're forming groups online. They're talking to people online. And I think that has helped in the lonely thing. So then you come back and you're used to this type of living and talking to your friends online that you don't have to sit in a room with. And it makes being in a room with people harder. So then you're still lonely. And that's one thing. We sent out a survey last year to our teachers and asked them to go through their list of homeroom kids. Do you know they have a friend? Do you know they have somebody to eat lunch with?
Really?
Yeah, those things are important, and I'll say, if we see people at lunch, we try to say, hey, why are you by yourself? Do you have anybody in here? We're trying to, and sometimes you'll not get anything. I don't want to sit with anybody. I just want to sit here by myself. That may change a little bit when they don't have a device too. So I think that we have to be intentional about paying attention to those things. And we have to take time to see who is lonely. You know what I'm saying? Who doesn't have anybody to talk to? Who's in the cafeteria sitting by themselves? Those things are very important, and that's on us to be intentional about it.
Looking back 30 years ago, was that a problem 30 years ago?
Not at all. So different. But then, we had a lot of drama. Yeah, you have drama. Girls, they can't forget anything for 25 years. I mean, you know how it is. Guys are just going to say it and fight it out. We had our share of fighting and stuff at Central. But
at the gas station across the street, at the marathon.
Over at the Pottery, Carolina Pottery. Yeah, absolutely. And we dealt with it and moved on. But now things carry on forever because you put it on Instagram and we're sharing your picture and I'm going to go on somebody else's phone and say this to you and I'm going to harass you. And it's very hard now. We didn't have to deal with that stuff then. Phones will minimize discipline tremendously. Now it's going to go on outside. What you do after school, that's on you and parents, but it will really help our school day, and it will help kids. At the end of the day, it's going to help kids.
It sounds like of all the things, you're fascinated by what you find to be important, because I don't think it's what we would have expected.
No, I'm sure.
Right? But I think that's so fascinating because you have so much insight and making sure kids have a friend. Like, of all the discussions going on in the country about education and what should teachers be doing and what should they be teaching or not teaching, I've never heard that.
And I'll tell you, if people could be a fly on the wall at Tennessee High, they would be amazed at how much care is given for kids.
Wow.
That's way bigger than the principal of the high school. That's counselors and teachers and all this. I mean, we had a situation last year, and I'm not going to go into details about it. It was a bad situation, but our central office came over afterwards, and they were like, your secretaries were doing this. And I said, yeah, that's just what they do. They're not taught that. That's what they do. We are, I think people fail to realize, and it comes with its, not that it's perfect. It's not perfect. No place is perfect. No place that has over 100 employees doesn't have employees that could do better. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But overall, Tennessee High cares about people.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our people. And they just, people don't know the extremes that the staff goes to for our kids.
I don't see that inside the schools, but I see it. I coach kids from a lot of different schools, and I've told people recently, I said, the culture of Tennessee High it's different, and I don't know how to describe it. I don't know what's different, but it's something different, and maybe it is this. I think you probably are underestimating the culture that you've been a part of building. I know when you came into the job, I was looking back at an interview, and you said you wanted to talk to the cafeteria workers and the secretaries and listen to what they thought was important. What did you learn?
So my first year I brought everybody in and talked to them. And it's so funny, I've done that every year but last year. I didn't do it. And I'll tell you why I didn't do it. Because I had so many people that I felt like I'm just wasting their time. They don't have anything to talk about. But then I had people that said, hey, you didn't do your one-to-one meetings.
So you did. You talked to everybody one-on-one.
Yeah. And I'm going to do it again this year. Yeah. Because that's important. And I'll tell you, it's funny. Teachers, they've shared, just come by and ask us how we are. Let's not talk about math and science and social. Just ask me how I am. So last year when we lost Coach Bright, One of the things my biggest takeaway from that was, I might get emotional here.
Yeah.
It was so great to see all the things people said about her. And I thought, gosh, if people would have said to her when she was alive, so I came back and I said, hey, we're going to celebrate Kim. And I'm going to put these cards in the teacher's lounge and take time to be intentional about, if people mean something to you, tell them. Write on a card, give it to them. So we continue those things because those are the things that are important. It's amazing to me how important a handwritten card is to somebody.
Wow.
It's crazy. Just taking the time to write out a card. Those things are big. And those are the things that we really try to focus on. And I said, that's how we're going to celebrate Kim. Because, man, I wish she would have heard these things when she was alive. I mean, it's too late now. You know what I'm saying? But, man, if she would have heard those, and not that she didn't. I'm not saying that she didn't hear all those things. But I'm certain she didn't hear all the things people had to share about her. But if we model that for kids, that's how they're going to learn. And that's how they're going to be good citizens and good humans, you know?
Is that what that's part of your vision of be a good human?
Absolutely. It's a big deal. Yeah.
It seems like so much of what we've talked about, you go back to that, just be a good human.
And I go back to, you talk about, we had tragedies, Gabby Kennedy, when she passed away. The things that girl did, the text messages people had from her, that's when we started down the whole pathway of live like Gabby. You know what I mean? And then we started doing kindness quotes. Every Monday we do a kindness quote. And don't get me wrong, as new students have come in, they think, this is stupid. Why do you do this? But there are some that it means something to them. I've had kids that have come back and shared, well, you said this quote, or don't stop this. I know people complain. So if there are just one or two that it's helping, it's not any skin off my back, to do that. But really, just be kind. You'll hear it all the time. Be kind. Let's work on being kind to one another. Let's model that, and that's what's important.
It takes, what you're talking about is it's culture. I mean,
it's culture.
Right?
Yeah. And that's the hardest. I honestly feel like that's the hardest job of a principal is protecting your culture every day. I think that's what you have to go in every day, being intentional about protting your culture, because it can tear apart instantly.
Yeah, gosh.
I mean,
it takes years to
and I mean, we've had situations where, it's a little negative. We've had to work through different things, but
so you can tell the passion you have for building a culture, and it's just so cool to hear that, because I just don't think we know. I go back to the conversations about education. It's Common Core and all that stuff. Nobody talks about what you're talking about today. It's none of what you said is urgent. It's all important. So how do you approach a day so that you can keep the important a priority? How do you keep out all this urgent stuff that must just flood your phone and your email all the time? Just urgent stuff. How do you make
I can't always keep it out. It's crazy. I don't always work off of a calendar, and I kind of just go in. I have priorities, but typically they're going to change. You know what I mean? And I feel like in my role, I'm the protector, and I want to take all of it. I don't want other people to take it. So that's not how it always happens. But as an administrative team, we work all day long to keep problems off teachers so they can teach. You know what I mean? We just take it. And it's, if you know something is going awry, or someone's upset about something, it's being transparent. I think you have to be transparent. And it's funny, I'll have people that get upset about stuff, and you can't always share. There are things that I may know for 6, 7, 8 months that I'm saying, just give me a minute. Just trust me. And that's hard, because sometimes they don't have a reason to trust me. But I typically just try to follow through and prioritize people. I think you have to prioritize people. Things are going to come and go. There are things that are still going to be a problem tomorrow, but today we're going to prioritize people.
But you make that conscious choice.
I think you have to.
Yes.
And I think that's protecting your culture. I do. And I want people to, like I said, I want teachers to want to teach at Tennessee High. I want kids to want to be at Tennessee High. And one of my struggles, and one thing that really bothers me, is just the conversation we're having. people get so frustrated with things, they don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wish people truly knew just how much I care about your kids.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing this otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I care about your kids. And there's a community at Tennessee High, they care about your kids. You know what I'm saying? Give us a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
none of that is easy. None of that
no.
is easy to build. Like
it's not.
when I talked to Kelly Vance with the Viking Academy a few weeks ago, it's such a fantastic culture you guys are
It's great.
building there, and it seems like it's just like how does this happen in Bristol? Like why are we able to do something like that in Bristol that hasn't been done anywhere? It sounds like I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
There is no model for it, but we're able to do these bold things in Bristol that seem to be working. Like I'm trying to figure out why. Like how are we able to do that here? And it sounds like, just talking to you, it's the culture is at the heart of this, and a freedom to try things and to take risks.
You have to take risks.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then when you take the risks, having a culture where you can say, that was wrong. Yeah. Like I talked to Kelly, like day one of that Viking Academy.
Yeah.
You guys, it sounds like you had no idea.
It was wild at the start. And that started with us at Tennessee High. We were like, oh my goodness, what's happening here? Yeah. Yeah. So it was struggle.
But and
we made mistakes.
Yeah. But there was this feeling that I got from her that, it was okay. Mm-hmm. We knew we were going to make mistakes, and we knew that people had our backs, and we could try these things, and it's getting better all the time.
Yeah, I think the key there is it's we. It's not Kelly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Kelly didn't make a mistake.
Yeah.
We. And I think that's the most important part of it, because I do think that we work together very well, the whole team. And I think Viking Academy is probably the best thing that we have going as far as when you talk about this community and the needs. Like when I'm in Johnson City, these kids would never make it at Science Hill High School. They're going to be dropouts. If they don't have these people here, you got people taking them to get a driver's license and taking them to do this. And, if you don't have that, these kids are not set up for success. That's a home to them. And I've been down there for events and stuff, and like kids that they're never going to come to stuff at Tennessee High, they want to stay down there. Yeah. I'm like, Kelly, they would spend the night here. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Parents who are never going to come to Tennessee High, but they're going to come here. And I've been able to watch parents be so proud of their kids. For the first, these kids are accomplishing things that no one ever thought they would. And like, I'm telling you, last year, not this past graduating group, but the year before, man alive, there were kids who walked across that stage that it's priceless.
Oh.
It's priceless.
They weren't even my kids, and I was proud of it.
It's so amazing, and I just think about what some of those kids have been through. And golly, I remember some of those kids I was in. Oh, like it was wild, and I'm thinking we're never going to get these kids graduated, and it's just work, and it's so funny. One of them, like, man alive, she came in and tells me she hated me, and I thought I'm gonna get her. She's not gonna hate me forever, and she did it. You know what I mean? But I always think too, and I learned this when I was at Science Hill. It's not about their entrance; it's about their exit.
Tell me about that.
They're going to enter
that relationship.
Well, because like when they come to us, if we do all the right things, they're going to exit much different than what they entered as. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I've seen that with so many kids. Yeah. But don't judge them by that. Don't judge them by how they come to us. Let's keep that for when they leave us, because they're going to be very different people. And we have such a significant role in that. In that process. And man, the Career Center, Viking Academy is amazing. It's amazing. That building's great. Everyone who came together to make that happen. And there are things that it's still not what we want it to be. Yeah. But it's always going to have we're going to have a vision to where we do want it to be. And, serving more students there. And there are students who they want to be there. It's their home. Yeah. It's great.
There's so many, like, it shows so many things that are right about this community, like the private. It took private business to help contribute to that.
school system. It's leadership.
Yeah.
But it would have been a lot easier just to let a few kids a year slide through the cracks.
Yeah.
Right.
And they do. Unfortunately, you're always going to have some that slide, but man, we don't want them to.
Yeah.
We don't want them to. We want to touch each one of them.
Yeah.
And that's hard sometimes, but I do think that, we've grown and put people in different roles, and we have two graduation coaches, and just trying to get it, making an attachment with these kids. Let's get them in. We have community in schools that works with us. They do a great job. So many resources.
It sounds like community, like creating communities. Going back to the pep rally example, it's us against the world. Like, it's kind of a common theme. The elementary school you started with, it's us against the world. The alternative school, and now how do you create that on a bigger platform, like the high school as a whole?
Yeah.
When you think 3 years down the road, what's your vision for 3 years from now?
I want to leave Tennessee High better than I found it, really. And I'm not sure, exactly what my plan is. I've been there for quite a while. Life of a high school principal is usually about 5 years, so I'm a couple years beyond that. But I'm not finished. There are things, because it's not what I want to keep growing, and I want my goal is I was thinking about this last night. I thought I wish this community would just rally around schools and kids as a community. When we talk about, like, we haven't played Virginia High football in a while, and we're talking about doing those things, but more than a football game, let's get back to let's have a parade on State Street again. You know what I'm saying? Wouldn't it be great if you went down State Street and on the Tennessee side, there was maroon and white and flags, and on the Virginia side, it was orange and black and flags.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What if you had a big Viking and a big Bearcat out there at the V out town where you go into the two different cities? Because honestly, your schools, it's your nucleus. Tennessee High is a nucleus of this community. And I wish that everyone could come together and put schools first and do everything we can as a community to grow these kids, invest in them. I mean, kids are your resources. They're your most valuable resource, And at the end of the day, have we done everything we can in this community to educate our kids and grow them and provide for them in order for them to be successful? And, sometimes break the old habits. You know what I'm saying? We have to do that. Because if we don't provide those resources and opportunities, who else is going to? And it takes a whole community,
Do you think it's possible that we could extend that culture that you guys have worked so hard to build at Tennessee High, extend that to the community?
I think it would be great.
At large.
I think it'd be great. But it takes a lot of people. And it takes a lot of buy-in.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of conversation.
You know what it doesn't take, though? It doesn't take a lot of money.
It doesn't take a lot of money. But the money would come.
Yeah.
You think about that. If you're doing all the things right, you have a sense of pride. You prioritize and get everything prioritized the way it should be. Everything else falls into place, Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, look at Tennessee High. We had interviews yesterday, and people coming. We had people that came from, we did some phone interviews, but there were people from Florida and all kinds of people, and people know about the castle.
Yeah.
They're like, the castle's amazing. It is amazing. Yeah. We're finally getting some updates in that. And like, that should be the most phenomenal place. Viking Hall. It's a phenomenal facility. No one else comes close to it. We need to be proud of that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For people that don't know, the Stone Castle is literally the football stadium.
It's amazing.
That is a stone castle. And I remember going in, I played against Tennessee High.
Right.
And it's this iconic.
Right.
Iconic stadium that could never be replicated anywhere else.
And how much would it cost to replicate that today? Oh my goodness, I can't imagine.
Well, you know how much it takes to put a new bathroom.
Right, exactly, right. And I mean, like, but look at Tennessee High. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, that is the most beautiful building. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So let's keep it beautiful for years to come.
Yeah, the most important thing going back is the culture.
Yeah, it's the culture.
And what would that look like if the community really bought into the culture and became like advocates of that
culture, and that's pretty
It'd be
exciting.
amazing. It is exciting. It's exciting, and the people that could be provided, the people that the resources those people would bring, the understanding. I think lots of times, like if you have buy-in, then when you have a little bit of negativity, and you have people that know and they see what's going on, those conversations change. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
If you have a reason to see things differently, then your conversations about things, they're going to change.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you learned at the alternative school. If you listen to people, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And if maybe we can put the phones down for a bit and be present with one another and listen, like what will that look like?
Right.
Yeah.
It would change things.
Yeah. Well, I have learned a lot.
I can talk for a long time.
No,
Sorry.
but for real, I am going to re-look at how I spend my time, because you get caught in these efficiencies.
Yeah.
Just so much, there's so many demands, so many responsibilities, and you just lean into efficiency so you can do more. But what I learned from you today is I think I need to rethink that. Efficiency isn't necessarily what's important, and that was pretty cool. And to hear that that's going on and that's part of the culture of the high school, with all the time constraints you guys have and all the demands that you guys are doing, it's inspiring.
Great.
So
that's great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for allowing me to come and talk. I've enjoyed it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm so appreciative of what you're doing.
Awesome.
At the school.
I appreciate you saying that.
All right.
Yeah.